and welcome to this week's Love Monday podcast. I'm glad you've joined me today, and I hope you've subscribed to this because I want you to get every bit of good out of this on Monday when it arrives. Now, today I'm a little bit late in producing this, so if you are one of my subscribers and you're getting this a little bit late on Monday, I apologize, but I had President's Day in the United States. I actually had time today to spend some time doing this podcast, and I wanted to make sure it was really good because I had a different idea for this podcast, and then I stumbled across an article that made me do some really deep thinking about what constitutes a good job, or a great job, a good job, a bad job, and being unemployed. And being unemployed has different meaning than what you think it does from the definition I'm going to give you. So I read this article. I came across this article out on LinkedIn, and it's written by John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup. And it's called The Real Global Job Crisis. And it starts out by talking about unemployment across the world. And I'm going to read from some of this article just to kind of give you some background on it. It says about unemployment. First of all, it starts with a great quote from Steve Jobs. It says, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work." So we're going to talk about great jobs, and we're going to talk about good jobs, and we're going to talk about bad jobs, and we're going to be talking about being unemployed. And you might even be working, and you might even be having money come in, but I would still consider you unemployed, and also based on what I read in this article. So I'm going to read from this article. "The world is facing a jobs crisis, but you would never know it by looking at the world's official unemployment rate. According to the International Labor Organization, global unemployment has remained around 5 to 6% for the past decade, a figure that hardly indicates a crisis. The official unemployment figure hides actual unemployment because of how it is calculated. Real global unemployment may be over 30%. Although this is very concerning, there is an even bigger problem: the alarming scarcity of great jobs. That's the bigger problem than unemployment. The alarming scarcity of great jobs. And what this article will point out is that only about 9%, not 90, but 9% of jobs are what could be considered great jobs. So if you have a great job based on the definition that I'm going to give you based on this article, you're pretty fortunate, because that's pretty rare, because 91% of the jobs out there are not great jobs based on the definition you're going to hear here in a few minutes. Of the roughly 3.3 billion, back to the article, of the roughly 3.3 billion people who want a great job, only 300 million have one. This is a real global jobs crisis. The global unemployment rate should be replaced with a new metric, the great jobs rate. The metric would hold leaders accountable for what really helps improve people's lives, a great job." So that's what we're going to talk about. What makes a great job? And leaders are the ones who make it a great job or not. So if you're listening to this as a manager, I hope you'll listen to it as a manager. If you and tune in to the things that you should be doing and can be doing and hopefully are doing to help your people have a great job. Because when I give you these definitions, you're going to be able to answer for your team. You don't need to ask them. You'll be able to answer for your team whether or not they have a great job. And that is not dependent on your organization or the job description or the job you're offering. It's how you are leading them as to whether or not they have a great job. Now, if you're an individual contributor listening to this and you're just trying to love Monday just like Friday, but for a different reason, then I want you to listen from that perspective and be honest about, are you in a great job, a good job, a bad job, or are you unemployed? Even though you're working, you might be unemployed based on the definition I'm going to give you. All right, I'm going to go back into this article. A little bit more about unemployment. The official global unemployment was 5.4% in 2019. according to the ILO. The pandemic pushed global unemployment to only 6.6% in 2020 and 6.2% in 2021. This would be a staggering figure if it applied to the entire global population of 7.7 billion people. But that is not how unemployment statistics work. Unemployment applies only to people who are in the labor force. The global labor force includes people who are working and people who are looking for work. It does not include children, retired people, students, homemakers like stay-at-home parents who are performing unpaid labor, or people who are not looking for work. The global labor force totals 3.3 billion people. So that's how we figure, that's how many people are in the global labor force. Of the 7.7 billion, 3.3 billion are in the labor force. A 5.4% unemployment rate means that less than 200 million people are unemployed. A massive number for sure. But is it a global crisis? Not really when you compare it to other things, like the 2 billion people who suffer from food insecurity, 1 billion people who live in slums or informal settlements, and 2.2 billion people who lack safely managed drinking water. One attempt to quantify how people are doing at work is a concept known as worker engagement. Or as Daniel Kahneman said on Adam Grant's podcast, my interpretation of worker engagement is fairly close to well-being at work. That day, Kahneman was referring to Gallup's measure for employee engagement, which quantifies well-being at work. We find that workers generally fall into three categories. People are either thriving at work, our technical term for it is engaged, quietly quitting, not engaged, or loudly quitting, actively disengaged. People who are thriving at work are enthusiastic and passionate about what they do. I want to pause on that. Enthusiastic and passionate about what you do. Does that describe you at work? Enthusiastic. So are you enthusiastic and passionate about your job? If you're not, you probably don't have a great job. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and how much is on you and how much is on your boss and how much is on your organization that you work for. But we'll talk about that coming up. But are you enthusiastic and passionate about what you do? They enjoy working with their colleagues, have development opportunities, and feel cared about as a person. People who have quietly quit are psychologically detached from their jobs. They put in the time without energy or passion. Loud quitters are resentful that their needs are not being met and represent the nadir or low point of worker happiness. So the definition of a great job is it's regular, steady work of at least 30 hours a week. You get a paycheck. You get to use your strengths on your job. Your opinions count, and your manager cares about your development. That's a great job. If you have those things, you can consider your job a great job. The definition of a good job is regular work at least 30 hours a week and a paycheck. That's it. So we're going to pause there before we go into bad jobs and unemployment. Do you have a great job or a good job? Now you say, you listen to that definition of a great job and it's fairly simple, and you would probably think, well, there's a lot more that goes into a great job than that. And there probably are, but some of those more things, like the perks and so forth, probably are subsets of this basic definition of a great job. So you have a great job based on that definition. Or do you have a good job based on the definition of regular work with regular pay? Now you listen to that and you think, well, that's pretty wide definition, and it is. I know a lot of people who, based on that definition, have a good job, but they still hate them. They hate that work. But it's regular work and it's steady pay. So it's a good job, especially compared to a lot of people in the world who don't have that. So if you feel like you're between good job and great job, which is it? A great job or a good job? All right, with that much thinking, we're going to go on to what a bad job is, which is kind of the opposite of just a good job, which is unpredictable work for an indeterminate amount of time per week and unpredictable pay. You're not sure if you're going to get paid, how much you're going to get paid, or when you're going to get paid. That's a bad job. So do you have a good job or a bad job? A good job was steady work at steady pay. A bad job is unsteady work at unsteady pay. So again, you might feel like your job is bad, but meeting this basic definition was a good job. But do you have a bad job, a truly bad job where it's unpredictable pay, unpredictable work? Pause on that for a second. Let you think about it. And then, are you unemployed? The unemployed definition starts with the basic definition that governments use, that you're in the workforce and you're trying to get a job, but you don't have one. You're out of work, but you're in the workforce. I add to that, you're self-employed, but you're struggling. So you are doing everything, you're scrambling to make ends meet because you don't have a regular job, but you're not considered part of that in the workforce. You're not considered part of the unemployment because you're employed, you're doing work. But I consider you unemployed in that case, and so does Gallup from this article. Or you also are engaged in unpaid work. So you're working and and it's steady work, like being a stay-at-home parent, but it's unpaid. I still think that's unemployed. So, but unemployment figures would not count you because you're not unemployed. You're employed in doing something. You're just doing it for free. You're not getting paid for it. But I consider that unemployed. The pay portion of employment is critical here. So, based on those things, do you have a great job, a good job, a bad job, or are you unemployed? Now, again, I think I mentioned this earlier. I have a poll running for the next 2 weeks out on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow me. Go find that poll and please answer it. I have those definitions in that poll, whether you have a great job, a good job, a bad job, or you're unemployed. And it's turning out to be pretty interesting so far. So whether or not you answer my poll, whether or not you find me on LinkedIn and answer my poll, I want you to know, you to figure this out for yourself. Do you have a great job, a good job, a bad job, or are you unemployed? Now, if you're a manager of people listening to this, you should be able to answer this question on behalf of your people. Do they have a great job, a good job, a bad job, or are they unemployed? Well, you probably don't know about the unemployed, so let's throw that one out. Your people, do they have a great job, a good job, or a bad job? Do you have people working for you at unpredictable hours, so probably part-time work, and so their pay is unpredictable? That's not a good job. It's not a great job. It's a bad job by this definition. So you might solely employ bad job people. But there are things you can do to make that better. Or do your people have a good job? Regular hours, and even if they're part-time, sometimes it's regular. It's 30 hours at least, and the pay is steady. So that could be a good job, but still part-time. Or do they have a great job? And the great job is where you make all the difference as a leader of the people. Do you allow them to use their strengths? Do you know what their strengths are? Do their opinions count? Do you ask for them? And when you get them from them, what do you do with those opinions? Do you just say, oh, yeah, thanks for your opinion, and then you ignore them and never circle back with them and give them follow-up? And do you care about their development? Are you doing things to help them develop, giving them challenges, giving them opportunities to learn and grow? That's where you are the one that makes a great job or not. And this is, so if you're an individual contributor listening to this and you say you don't have a great job, that's the portion where you really don't have control anymore to make it a great job. If you're in a good job, you may not have a whole lot of control to make it a great job. You could have a conversation with your manager and express your concerns about how you feel you don't get to use your strengths, your opinions don't count, and you don't feel like your development you have an opportunity for development. You could talk to your manager about those. And by all means, if you haven't, I would suggest you do as a first step before quitting. But you really don't have much control over whether you have a great job or not. Your point of control is whether you stay employed at a good job or go find a great one. And it's all about the manager. And so again, if you're a manager, it's all about you, whether people have a great job or just a good job or potentially a bad job. So if you're a manager, you can answer this question for your people. If you're an individual contributor, answer it for yourself and then be real about, are you going to settle for a good job or a bad job? Or are you going to go get a great job? If you have a great job, we're going to let you off the hook. You don't have to listen to the rest of this podcast unless you want to. But I am willing to bet that most people do not have a great job. If you're listening to this, you probably don't have a great job. You probably meet that definition of having a good job or a bad job. So we will talk in the future about how to move from a great job into your zone of genius, where you're actually answering that calling and doing that thing you were born to do. But today we're not going to go there. We're going to talk about how to take a good job to a great job. Now, as an individual contributor, let's talk about that first. How do you take a good job to a great job? Answer is you probably can't. That's the bad news. If you're in a good job, you have some decisions to make. And I guess before you totally give up on your good job, you could try to have a conversation with your manager, with your boss, to express your concerns about how your opinions don't matter, how you don't get to play to your strengths, and how you want to develop, but you feel like you don't really have any development opportunities. That's a hard conversation to have, but it's one you can have. But really what it comes down to, if you are meeting this definition of a good job, you have a decision to make. What are you going to do? Are you going to have that conversation? Do you have any hope of having your good job turn great? Because if you don't, it's probably time to be real with yourself and make plans to move on. And when you want to make plans to move on, you need to make sure you're headed in the right direction. So for you as an individual contributor, the steps for you to go from a good job to a great job are to clearly define what a great job looks like to you. Is it in your same field that you're in? Because that's one thing you want to look at too. Even if your job were great, if you hate the work you're doing, you might want to think about what your best life looks like at work and define what a great job looks like. And when I say that, get a vision of what kind of work you're doing. What's the best work you can be doing? And then where can you do that work? And then when you find out where you can do that type of work, whether it's in your current organization or you have to go to a new one, then you need to clearly and objectively, as much as possible, interview your new boss. And I have an article out there on LinkedIn and on LoveMondayLikeFriday.com called I Wish I Could Ask the Boss About the Boss. And it's going to give you 12 questions to ask when you're in the job interview process. We even had an episode about that. I don't remember which number that was, but we had an episode about that. So you need to have a crystal clear vision of what your new job looks like, what that great job looks like. And then you need to make sure you get a great boss who's going to help you play to your strengths, make sure your opinions count, and then also be concerned with and helpful in your development. That's how you're going to get a great job as an individual contributor. Now, if you're a manager, you can impact your people's lives by turning their good jobs into great jobs. And those are the three things you got to do. You got to help them play to their strengths. So how are you going to do that? You need to know from each member of your team what things on their daily task list give them energy versus the things that drain their energy. And the things that drain their energy are not things where they get to use their strengths. Those are things that they're not good at and they're probably never going to be good at. So you want to find out the things that give them energy, where time passes without notice, where they love what they do, they're enthusiastic about it and can't wait to get back and do it again, and it gives them energy. That's what you want your people. You don't want to know what that is for your people and then employ them in doing those things. And those are good conversations to have, because what if there's nothing on their daily task list that gives them energy in what you do? Then you need to help them move on, either to some other place in the organization where they can get that energetic job, or you help them move out of the organization and say, realistically, what you want to do just doesn't exist here. And I want you to be happy. So I want to be your biggest advocate for going to get a great job, because this one's never going to be better than good for you. So be real with your people, but be real with yourself. Are you helping people play to their strengths? The next thing you can do to make great jobs as a manager is to make sure their opinions count. Do you ask for their opinions? Where can you do that? You can do that in regular one-on-one conversations with each member of your team, and I suggest you should have those at least on a every other week basis. Weekly is better, but at least every other week, and have a set agenda. And one of those questions should be, hey, how do you think things are going? How are things going with your job? Could we do anything to improve it? Now, a lot of managers don't want to ask those questions because then it kind of paints them into a corner of having to do something about those opinions they get. Well, that's exactly what you got to do. And if you don't want to do that, you're in the wrong job as a manager. You need to get out of the business and make room for somebody who can do the job properly. But you can do it still. You can ask for those opinions. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to take action in the moment or even in the next month, week, or year on some of those things. Some of those are going to be longer term objectives that you're going to get through those opinions. But you should take action on all of them and then follow up. And sometimes the follow-up is no more than, hey, I really appreciate this. I've escalated that, or this is what I'm doing to make that better. How does that sound? And here's the timeline. And sometimes you're doing more than saying, you know what, the thing you gave us, it's such a great idea, but we are not in the position right now as an organization or me as your manager to make that a priority. And I just want to be honest with you. We're not going to be able to do anything about that, but keep it on the front burner for me. Keep reminding me of that, because maybe there's some way we can get closer to it. But be honest with them and give feedback and circle back and give follow-up to those opinions. And the third thing you can do as a manager is to make sure you are helping them with their development. So again, in your one-on-one conversations, where do they want to go with their careers? Do you ever ask that question? Sometimes, again, managers are afraid to ask this question because of the answers they'll get. You're running a burger joint and somebody on your team wants to be a doctor. Well, you're never going to have that at your burger joint, but you don't want to ask that because you don't want to lose these people. Well, hello, you're going to lose them anyway. You might as well have conversations about, I get it. I'm so glad you want to be a doctor. And here's some things you can develop while you're working here at Burgers R Us that are going to make you a better doctor. Like, communicating with people. There's so many doctors out there who are horrible communicators. They're great scientists, they're great physicians, but they couldn't talk to people if they had to. And so that's something that you can help them develop. That's just an example. But the point is, how can you help your people develop in whatever they're doing now to get to their future aspirations? And some of those aspirations are going to be stepwise on your team and within your organization. And then a lot of people are going to leave your organization, but that's okay. Because the only thing worse than hiring a bad employee or hiring a good employee and losing them is hiring a bad employee and keeping them. Now, I don't believe any employees are bad, but if we are holding them back and we're not helping them develop and we're not holding them accountable, they tend to be on that bad side. They tend to be on that unproductive side, that side of they're not really helpful to us, to themselves, or anyone. So you as a manager can change all that. So that's what you can do as a manager, as a leader of people, to make sure that you're turning your just good jobs into great jobs. Now, let's say you've got a bad job. You're in that position where you have a bad job with unpredictable schedules, unpredictable work, and unpredictable pay. What can you do as an individual? Well, it's really the same thing as the people who have a good job and want a great job. If you have a bad job and you want a great job, first of all, I'm not going to say go from bad to good to great. I'm going to say go from bad, hop over good, and go straight to great. But again, it's decision time for you. If you're in a bad job, there's probably very little you can do to talk to your manager to make it good or great. Now, not completely hopeless, but it's unlikely. So you have a decision to make. Are you going to stick in that bad job? Are you going to stay with that, stick with it, and continue to be in a bad job? Or are you going to do something different? And what do you have to do? Is it going to require retraining? Is it going to require expanding your network to people who might be able to help you get a great job? Because you have talents and you have skills, and you need to understand what those are. So figure out, what do you do really well? And again, just like the people who had the good job and want to move to a great job, get a clear definition A clear description. Write about it. Journal about it. What is that great job for you? Because that's the first step in getting that great job, is knowing what it is. And if you meet the qualifications now, go get that great job. If you don't, start working on getting those qualifications while you've got a bad, or maybe can move into a good job. But aim for a great job. Now, if you're a manager of people with bad jobs, what can you do to make them better? Now, if it's truly a situation where you got a workforce of unpredictable pay and unpredictable work hours, is there something you can do to change that? Can it be more predictable? If it's simply that you can't, you have a bunch of day laborers or contractors or something, that gets a little bit more difficult. But can you do something to make it more regular? And even if you can't, there's something you can do to make it closer to a great job. It doesn't meet the full definition of at least 30 hours a week in regular pay, but you can let them play to their strengths, potentially. And you can have their opinions count in the same way I talked about just a few minutes ago. And you can help them with their development. And that may not even meet that definition of a good job, but it shows you care. And that's a big deal. But also be aware, and you probably already know this, people leave you when you only offer bad jobs. So do what you can within your organization, or if you are the owner of the organization, do what you can to make those bad jobs great jobs. That's what I've got for you there. If you're unemployed, I give you the same, and you're an individual contributor, I give you the same advice. If you're unemployed and want to be employed, what is it that you do best? What is that ideal job that you want to have? Don't just go for the job you just lost, the job you're unemployed from, because I'll give you some hard truth here. If you're involved in a layoff, in most cases, and I've been involved in a layoff, so this is a self-indictment here as well. But in most cases, if you're involved in a layoff, you were not one of the top performers in your organization. Not always, but typically in a layoff or a reduction in force, what they call a RIF, there's a stack ranking. And if you're not falling at the top, then that's why you got laid off. If you're falling at the bottom, that's why you got laid off. Now, there are some completely subjective reasons why you might have been at the bottom. You might have been a threat to somebody that's above you, and they want to just get rid of you. So there are subjective reasons. So that's one thing to look at. If you're unemployed, look at that and make sure, go back to that article I talked about earlier, get those 12 questions. So make sure you hire a better boss than the one that just let you go. Because if you weren't a top performer based on the fact that you couldn't do the work very well, or you weren't ranked a top performer because you were a threat to somebody, you had a bad boss. Either way, if you got laid off, you had a bad boss. Because layoffs are always a lagging indicator of management failure. And if your boss had to let you go, had to lay you off, even if they were told by the organization they had to lay you off, that manager should have been managing the team better to not have overhired to the point where you were even able to let anybody go from your team. Because the only reason we have layoffs is because we can do the work with fewer people, and we've overhired and we've run fat and continue to run fat, and that is poor management from the CEO on down. But layoffs are always and without exception a lagging indicator of management failure. And so you need to get a better manager. If you're unemployed, you need to get a better manager next time. So use those 12 questions in the article. I wish I could ask the boss about the boss. You'll find it on lovemondaylightfriday.com. You'll find it on LinkedIn under my profile, I think I've got like about 115 articles out there, and it goes back a year or so. You'll find that article. If you're unemployed because you are working and you're just struggling to make ends meet, is this how you want to continue? Are you trying to follow the entrepreneurial path and it's just not working out for you? Do something different. Don't struggle. maybe reconsider what you're doing. Is this something that's feasible long term? How long have you been at it? And if it is feasible long term, do you need to get a business coach or somebody to help you turn the corner and take it to the next level? Don't just struggle in unemployment under that definition. And if you're in an unpaid job, first of all, I think all jobs should be paid. Even if you're a stay-at-home parent, there ought to be some way to pay you, whether it's within the family or I really wish we had some way to pay people who serve in that one of the most important roles we have in the world, and that's raising kids. But again, what can you do about that? And maybe you are in a place right now where that's what you're going to be doing, but you're not always going to be there. So I want you to start to dream big as well and start to think about when your kids are in school and ready to get going, what can you do? What is that ideal job for you? What does that look like? What is your work environment? Who are you working with? Who are you working for? What type of work are you doing? Start to get that vision and catch that vision, because you're going to start working toward that vision and aligning your future with it. So I hope this has helped you today. I hope this has been useful information. I hope you'll subscribe to this podcast, because I share great information every week, great content. I have lots of experience as a manager, as an individual contributor, as a speaker, as a teacher, as a trainer, as somebody who has helped hundreds of people develop their careers. I hope this is helpful. Subscribe to the podcast. Go out to lovemondaylikeFriday.com for free resources, some paid resources. You're going to see me adding more paid courses out to lovemondaylikeFriday.com and some more free resources. But that's going to be primarily my paid site. But you'll always be able to find free resources to help you love Monday just like Friday for a different reason. And until next time, until next week, I will talk to you soon.